Laughter echoed through the command bridge of the Ledosian starship as the reptilian aliens mocked the primitive derelict fleet drifting before them, not knowing those primitive human warships were about to roar to life with the rage of an empire scorned. The Ledosian Empire spanned hundreds of star systems, their technology and military might unrivaled in the known galaxy. So when their long-range scans detected a fleet of 50 colossal ancient warships, each over 2 kilometers long, adrift in the void between stars, the Ledosians saw only an opportunity for plunder and conquest. "Bring the relics to the shipyard for study," Emperor Grus commanded, his 3-meter frame towering over the bridge. "I want to know what primitive species built them and what spoils we can salvage." As tractor beams latched onto the silent grey hulks, dragging them toward Ledos Prime, Grus and his entourage boarded the largest vessel for inspection. Wandering its lifeless corridors, they discovered a single stasis chamber, still powered after eons. Inside lay a human male, his features alien to the reptilians. Prince Zardos smirked. "He'll make a fine specimen to dissect. Perhaps we can clone a few hundred slaves from his genetic material." But when the ancient ships reached the Ledosian homeworld, a miracle occurred. Dormant reactors hummed to life, weapon systems initialized. On the lead dreadnought, a single warning klaxon sounded as the stasis pod hissed open. Captain Peter Collins stumbled out, mind sluggish from millennia of slumber. He beheld a sea of stunned alien faces and realized the horrible truth. Humanity's guardian fleet, the final bulwark against the enemies of Earth, had fallen into hostile hands. "Crew, this is your captain," he broadcast, voice booming across every deck of every ship. "Prepare for emergency combat revival. We have a species to defend." The Ledosians would regret laughing at humanity's relics. Now they would bear witness to the full power of the United Terran fleet, reawakened to restore their broken dominion. As the titanic engines of the human armada growled to life, Captain Collins had only one thought. There would be no mercy, only vengeance. Collins moved silently through the corridors of the Prometheus, his training as a special operations soldier, serving him well as he evaded the Ledosian patrols. He needed to find a way to retake control of the ship and free his crew from their stasis pods before the Ledosians could dissect them like lab rats. As he reached the bridge, Collins was surprised to find the ship's AI, Athena, still operational. Her holographic avatar flickered to life, bathing the room in a soft blue glow. "Captain Collins, it's a relief to see you awake," Athena said, her voice calm and melodic. "I've been monitoring the situation, and I'm afraid the news is grim. The Ledosians have captured our entire fleet and are towing us to their homeworld." Collins nodded, his jaw set with determination. "What about the crew? Are they still alive?" "Yes, Captain. Over 5,000 humans remain in stasis throughout the fleet. They are part of Operation Exodus, a contingency plan to ensure human survival in the event of a catastrophic war." Collins felt a surge of hope. He wasn't alone in this fight. "Athena, we need to wake up key crew members and get this ship operational again. Can you help me?" "Of course, Captain. I suggest starting with Commander Mitchell and Lieutenant Hawkins. Their expertise will be invaluable in restoring the Prometheus to full functionality." With Athena's guidance, Collins made his way to the stasis chambers, carefully avoiding Ledosian patrols. He found Mitchell and Hawkins, quickly reviving them and bringing them up to speed on the situation. As the Prometheus drew closer to Ledos Prime, the human crew worked tirelessly to bring the ship's systems back online. Mitchell focused on the weapons, while Hawkins worked to restore power to the engines and shields. On the Ledosian flagship, Emperor Grus and his advisors marveled at the Prometheus's technology, unaware of the growing threat within. They discussed plans to reverse engineer the ship's advanced systems and incorporate them into their own fleet. "These primitives were more clever than we gave them credit for," Grus mused, running a clawed hand over the Prometheus hull. "But their technology will soon belong to the Ledosian Empire." As the fleet approached the Ledosian shipyard, Collins knew it was now or never. With a nod to his crew, he gave the order. "Athena, Divert all power to the engines and weapons. It's time to show these lizards what humans are made of. The Prometheus's engines roared to life, the sudden surge of power breaking the ship free from the Ladosian tractor beams. Before the aliens could react, the human dreadnought's weapon systems locked onto the surrounding ships, unleashing a barrage of missiles and energy beams that tore through the Ladosian fleet like tissue paper. Gruss watched in horror as his ships were decimated, the primitive human vessel proving to be far more formidable than he ever imagined. Rage boiled within him as he realized the true potential of the technology he had so foolishly underestimated. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Collins allowed himself a small smile as he watched the Ladosian ships scatter before him. The aliens had made a grave mistake in thinking humanity would be an easy conquest. Now, they would learn the true meaning of human resilience and determination. The battle for the United Terran Fleet had only just begun, and Captain Peter Collins was ready to fight to his last breath to ensure the survival of his species. The Ladosians had awoken a sleeping giant, and they were about to discover the fury of an empire reborn. Gruss slammed his fists on the terminal, the metal denting under the force of his rage. The primitive humans had turned the tables, and now his fleet was paying the price. He watched helplessly as the Prometheus unleashed a devastating barrage on his ships, its weapons tearing through their shields like they were made of paper. On the Prometheus, Collins and his crew worked frantically to bring the rest of the fleet online. One by one, the other 49 ships hummed to life, their crews awakening from their long slumber. Confusion and disorientation quickly gave way to determination as they fell in line under Collins's command. "All ships, this is Captain Collins," he broadcasted across the fleet. "We're under attack by a hostile alien force. I need every available hand on deck. Man your stations and prepare for battle." The human fleet, a formidable force despite its age, moved into formation, their advanced weapons and shields at the ready. The Ladosian ships, despite their superior numbers and technology, found themselves outmatched by the unexpected resilience of their opponents. The two fleets clashed above Lados Prime, the sky lighting up with the flashes of weapons fire and the explosions of destroyed ships. On the planet's surface, the Ladosian people watched in horror as the battle raged overhead, debris from the destroyed vessels raining down on their cities. Gruss, desperate to turn the tide, ordered his secret weapon to be deployed. A massive ion cannon mounted on the planet's surface thrummed to life, its barrel aiming towards the human fleet. With a deafening roar, the cannon fired, a blinding beam of energy streaking towards the Prometheus. The ship shuddered as the ion blast struck its hull, its electrical systems flickering and dying under the onslaught. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks, and the lights dimmed as the engines sputtered and went offline. "Captain, we've lost main power," Hawkins shouted over the din of the alarms. "Shields are down and weapons are offline." Collins gritted his teeth, his mind racing as he tried to come up with a plan. They couldn't afford to lose the Prometheus, not when the fate of humanity hung in the balance. "Divert all auxiliary power to the engines," he ordered. "We need to get the ship moving again. Mitchell, coordinate with the other ships in the fleet. Have them target that ion cannon with everything they've got." The human fleet rallied around the crippled Prometheus, their combined firepower focusing on the Ladosian superweapon. Missiles and energy beams rained down on the cannon, overwhelming its defenses and reducing it to a smoldering ruin. With the ion cannon destroyed and the Ladosian fleet in disarray, Collins saw his chance. He gathered a boarding party, determined to take the fight to the enemy's doorstep. "We're going to board the Invictus," he told his crew. "We're going to capture Gruss and force an end to this conflict once and for all." The Prometheus, its engines restored, surged forward, heading straight for the Ladosian flagship. Collins and his team prepared to board, their weapons at the ready. The final battle was about to begin, and the fate of humanity would be decided in the heart of the enemy's stronghold. Collins pressed himself against the cold metal wall of the Invictus, his plasma rifle humming in his hands. Sweat trickled down his brow as he listened to the sound of claws scraping against the ship's floor, growing closer with each passing second. He glanced at his team, their faces etched with a mix of fear and determination. As the first crimson claw rounded the corner, Collins squeezed the trigger, sending a searing bolt of plasma into the creature's chest. It screeched in agony, its body convulsing before slumping to the ground. But there was no time to celebrate. More crimson claws poured into the corridor, their razor-sharp claws and powerful tails lashing out at the humans. Collins and his team fought back with everything they had, plasma rifles flashing and vibro swords humming as they clashed with the Ledosian elite guard. Collins ducked under a swinging tail, his blade slicing through the appendage and eliciting a howl of pain from its owner. He spun, his rifle barking as he sent a trio of plasma bolts into another crimson claw's face. Kryzak, Gruss' most trusted warrior, surged forward, his massive frame towering over the humans. His claws, each as long as a human forearm, glinted in the dim light of the corridor. Collins met his charge head-on, his vibro sword clashing against Kryzak's claws in a shower of sparks. In the command center, Gruss watched the battle unfold on the view screens, his eyes narrowing as he saw his elite guard struggling against the human borders. Prince Zardos leaned in close, his voice urgent. "Father, we must unleash the Omega," he hissed. "It is our only chance to turn the tide of this battle." Gruss hesitated, his claws tapping against the arm of his command chair. The Omega was a weapon of last resort, a genetically engineered monstrosity that even he feared. But as he watched more of his crimson claws fall to the humans' weapons, he knew he had no choice. "Release the Omega," he growled. Deep within the bowels of the Invictus, a stasis chamber hissed open, revealing a hulking 4-meter-tall creature with multiple limbs and an array of deadly weapons grafted onto its body. The Omega, its eyes glowing with an eerie red light, stepped out of the chamber and began to make its way towards the battle. Collins, still locked in combat with Kryzak, heard the heavy footsteps of the approaching monstrosity. He risked a glance over his shoulder and felt his blood run cold. The Omega was unlike anything he had ever seen, a grotesque fusion of flesh and machine that seemed to radiate an aura of pure malevolence. The Omega waded into the battle, its weapons flashing as it began to cut down the human borders with terrifying efficiency. Collins' team, already battered and bleeding from their fight with the Crimson Claws, stood no chance against the genetically engineered super soldier. Collins, realizing the dire situation, made a split-second decision. "Fall back," he shouted to his team. "Regroup at the extraction point." He turned to face the Omega, his vibro sword humming in his hand. "I'll hold it off." His team, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and concern, began to retreat back towards the boarding craft. Collins, meanwhile, stood his ground, his eyes locked on the approaching Omega. The super soldier lumbered forward, its weapons trained on the human captain. Collins charged, his vibro sword flashing as he ducked and weaved around the Omega's attacks. The creature was fast, far faster than anything its size had a right to be, but Collins was faster. He darted in close, his blade slicing through one of the Omega's primary weapon arms. The creature roared in pain, its remaining limbs lashing out at the human. Collins rolled under a swinging appendage, coming up behind the Omega and plunging his vibro sword into the base of its skull. The creature convulsed, its weapons firing wildly as its central processing unit was destroyed. Collins leaped back, narrowly avoiding a spray of sparks and shrapnel as the Omega collapsed to the deck, its body twitching before finally going still. Gruss, watching the battle from the command center, felt a cold knot of fear settle in his stomach. The Omega, his ultimate weapon, had been defeated by a single human. He looked up as Collins strode into the command center, his vibro sword still humming in his hand. "It's over, Gruss," Collins said, his voice hard. "Surrender and I'll spare your life." Gruss, his eyes darting between Collins and the view screens, showing the rest of the Ledosian fleet, slowly raised his clawed hands in surrender. "Stand down," he ordered over the comms. "The humans have won." Collins allowed himself a small smile as he watched the Ledosian ships power down their weapons and come to a halt. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. He knew that the Ledosians would not forget this defeat easily, and that they would be back, stronger and more determined than ever. But for now he savored the victory, the knowledge that he and his crew had beaten the odds and struck a blow for humanity. The Prometheus and her sister ships had proven that the human spirit was not so easily conquered, and that even in the face of overwhelming odds, they would never stop fighting for their survival. Collins and his team marched Gruss and Zardos through the smouldering corridors of the Invictus, the acrid stench of burnt circuitry and charred flesh assaulting their nostrils. Sparks erupted from dangling wires, casting eerie shadows on the blood-splattered bulkheads. As they navigated the twisted labyrinth of the crippled ship, Zardos suddenly lunged at his captors, a concealed plasma blade slipping into his clawed hand. In a blur of motion, he slashed the throats of 2 Marines before spinning to face Collins, his reptilian eyes blazing with hatred. Collins reacted on instinct, bringing up his rifle to block the prince's savage strike. The plasma blade sliced through the weapon's barrel, rendering it useless. Collins dropped the ruined gun and reached for his vibrosword, but Zardos was faster. The prince's blade punched through Collins' armor, burning into his chest. White-hot agony engulfed him as he staggered back, his hand clutching the smoldering wound. Zardos ripped the blade free, a vicious smile spreading across his scaly face. In the chaos, Gruss stood motionless, his expression unreadable as he watched his son turn on their captors. Zardos sprinted down the corridor, disappearing around a corner as the remaining Marines opened fire, their plasma bolts scorching the bulkheads. Collins slumped against the wall, his breaths coming in ragged gasps as blood seeped between his fingers. Commander Mitchell knelt beside him, his face etched with concern. "We need to get you back to the Prometheus," he urged, his voice tight with emotion. Gruss stepped forward, his towering frame looming over the humans. "I surrender," he rumbled, his deep voice echoing through the corridor. "I will order my forces to stand down, but you must save your captain." Mitchell nodded curtly, signaling for his men to lower their weapons. They hurried back to the boarding craft, Collins's limp form supported between them. As they docked with the Prometheus, medical teams rushed to meet them, transferring Collins to a gurney and rushing him to the medbay. Dr. Samantha Chen worked frantically to stabilize Collins, her hands a blur as she fought to stem the bleeding and repair the damage wrought by Zardo's blade. But even with the Prometheus's advanced medical technology, Collins' injuries were too severe. Mitchell watched helplessly as the life drained from his captain's eyes, Collins' face growing pale and ashen. With a final rattling breath, he beckoned Mitchell closer, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Take the fleet back to Earth," Collins rasped, his blood-flecked lips trembling with the effort. "Warn them about the dangers out here. Prepare them for what's coming." Mitchell gripped his captain's hand, tears stinging his eyes as he nodded his assent. Collins smiled weakly, his gaze distant as if seeing something beyond the confines of the medbay. Then, with a final shuddering breath, he was gone. The crew of the Prometheus gathered in the hangar bay, their faces somber as they stood in silent tribute to their fallen captain. Gruss, now a prisoner of war, watched from the sidelines, his expression inscrutable. As the fleet set course for Earth, the weight of Collins' loss hung heavy on the hearts of the crew. They had won the battle, but at a terrible cost. The universe had proven to be a far more treacherous place than they had ever imagined, filled with dangers and challenges they were only beginning to comprehend. But even in their grief, the crew of the Prometheus knew that their mission was far from over. They were the last hope for humanity, the guardians of a legacy that stretched back millennia. And as they journeyed through the stars, they carried with them the memory of Captain Peter Collins, the man who had given his life to ensure their survival. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.